Someone's making a racket outside of my bedroom. You alright, Mum? Yeah. What are you doing?
You sounded surprised that she was in the house. Alright, Mum.
Maybe that should be the intro.
Yeah.
Alright. and then the jingle plays.
Shall we copy what other podcasts do and just do like this casual chatting thing, and it makes it seem really natural? And then at randomly one point, one of us just goes, "Hello and welcome," kind of thing.
Hello and welcome. It's the RAGAMUFFIN Music Podcast.
That's what every podcast is, isn't it? It's just white guys with opinions. So we're just three white guys with opinions.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you will listen.
And you will learn.
Yeah.
We will educate you.
You will listen. It sounds making it so threatening. I think it's nice. I think as a trio, we're probably going to gigs
in the old life, yeah.
On the regular.
Every 2 months, minimum.
Yeah. Basically, we'd normally have this kind of chat anyway, but we might as well just record it and let the world listen.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
Exactly. They don't know they wouldn't, but
they're asking for it.
Here it comes. Should we start by introducing ourselves first? Because most people to find this probably follow us and stuff anyway. But anyway, my name's Dan, and this is what my voice sounds like.
And I am James.
I'm Alex.
I might put on a different voice now, just to throw everyone off. Yeah.
Anyway, bloody COVID. Am I right? It's been a nightmare because, as I said, we so frequently are going to gigs that this year's kind of been a bit of a void for us.
Well, that's the thing, like, I mean, for us as a collective, the three of us have our first gig booked in May.
On my birthday.
While she sleeps on Dan's birthday.
Stick that in the calendar, you know.
Yeah.
Just keep that bookmarked for later dates. And that's the thing. I'm just listening to music. I'm desperate for gigs. I realise it's been like 10 months since last going to a gig. And I think that's the longest time ever since like regularly going to gigs, probably about 10 years ago, roughly now. At that point, this is the longest time I've gone between seeing bands live.
I don't think I've gone longer than 2 months before without seeing some form of live music. So 10 is unheard of, and it'll be a year at least by the time we get back to one.
Well, for us, our last one was in February.
Yeah.
We're only 2 months away from that happening, and that being a year removed. I mean, we're lucky we managed to cram a few in a very short succession at the beginning of the year. But that's the thing, it's going to be such a long time. There's so many gigs rescheduled for next year as well that tickets are booked for.
I don't know about you guys, but I've completely lost track of everything that I've had booked and has been rescheduled.
Oh, it's mad. I feel like I know everything, because I know we've got Underworld in London, I believe.
Lovely little venue.
And then I think... I can't wait for that. That's bringing me like Bullingdon vibes already. I'm thinking it's going to go off like that. And then a couple of weeks after, Slam Dunk Festival. Week after Slam Dunk, we've got Download.
Indeed.
I don't know what else I've actually got booked.
Just waiting on that lineup announcement, if it's ever going to come.
I believe we've got Truck Festival down.
Oh, yes, we do.
We've got 2,000 Trees, haven't we, as well?
Can't forget 2,000 Trees.
Keep forgetting about that. Keep forgetting we've got tickets for that.
I think we've got Nothing But Thieves in October as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just listing off all these things that might get cancelled.
I know. I don't know the state I'm going to be in if they all get cancelled. It's going to be horrible. I have high hopes for Sleeps, I think.
Well, yeah, but with it being a very small venue, there's the sort of small chance that it could happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like coming to the idea of like, when we go to gigs, obviously you're always getting patted down, they have the security and everything, and it's going to probably become part of the new normal, at least for inside venues, that everyone's going to start getting temperature checked, most likely. I see that as like a nice regulation for them to cover their own backs, because the only other option you've got is making sure that people have had the vaccine at that point if they're going to be in close contact with each other, or having temperature checks really, just to moderate, because again, you're having a group of people in an indoor environment at that point. If it's like an indoor concert, like Sleeps is going to be, and I feel like with a 500 capacity venue, they could easily manage that. Yes, they might have to open doors a bit earlier and just manage it a bit better. But I think if people are wanting these gigs and going to be patient about it, that shouldn't really be a problem. I'm happy to wait in line as long as I need to in order to go and see live music again, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I believe there is a test that they've used in some circumstances that can get you a result in 15 minutes. So all you're looking at there is a bit of a longer queue for larger events, but
there we go. So
who knows? Yeah, it's all just speculation at the moment, isn't it? I don't think anyone really knows what's going to happen for sure. I mean, no one knows what's going to happen like next week at the moment. Yeah, so we can only speculate and hope, really.
Yeah. Grammy nominations have come out semi recently, and I tell you what, the nominations for Best Metal Performance are hefty. Body Count, Code Orange, In This Moment, Poppy, and Power Trip. So I feel like, yeah, it kind of hits all the different subgenres of metal, I think.
I think I'm with you on that.
Personally, I'm hoping for a Code Orange. There's a disappointing part of me that was really hoping the Trivium were getting a nomination for that, because they tried to make a bit of a push for it, and we'll get into this because we're going to talk about some reviews later on.
Yeah.
The new album they released this year, What the Dead Men Say, was, for me, fantastic, critically acclaimed. Fans have loved it. It's been probably one of their best albums they've released. And they've really made a push for it. And like, a part of me is slightly disappointed they're not in there. But I think I am not the biggest. I have not listened to a lot of those bands. But from what like you guys have played me before, Code Orange is the one that stands out to me most.
The recent album that came out this year was extremely popular as well. Lots of people putting it in their like top albums of the year and everything.
Yeah. And Power Trip are a band I've got into very recently, but just incredible. So like ferocious and energetic, but yeah. So I mean, good luck to all those bands. January 31st will be the award ceremony.
Yes.
So we'll find out then. And in other news, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This was a bit older. It was in November 7th. I'll read out the inductees because I know this is going to wind James up a little bit. We've got 9 Inch Nails, T-Rex, Depeche Mode, Whitney Houston, and the Notorious B.I.G.
I mean, Whitney Houston's a standout there, isn't she?
Fuck this.
And now we're... yeah. Cue James's meltdown.
Oh, man. That's the thing is, like, when it comes to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I am, like, but when it comes to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I get you're going to have, like, influences of, like, modern day bands. Like, off the top of my head, someone like, say, Linkin Park. You can tell by the kind of, like, new metal vibes of that, where you've kind of got some of the rap bits coming in, you know they've taken influence out of, like, artists like that. But then it's...
Well, I'll put it this way. I've heard of a lot of bands that have said they've been influenced by the sound of 9 Inch Nails, for example. I've not heard of many bands give interviews and say that Whitney Houston is the reason they've picked up a guitar.
Exactly, and it's just like, I don't get how that relates to rock and roll. It's like you can look back, you can see people like pioneers of it. Like they've probably got Bowie in there or people like that. But when you're getting so many of these other genres of artists, it doesn't become the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Just make it a music Hall of Fame at that point.
Yeah, I'm not one to gatekeep on genres, but I'm not sure Whitney Houston should be there. With all due respect.
Lightest. All due respect to Whitney Houston.
Yeah, some absolute tunes. I want to make that very clear, but rock and roll, probably not. But do you think, I guess the flip side of that is that there will be people out there that would say that rock and roll is more of a state of mind and an attitude, which is why people were a bit more open to NWA being inducted?
Yeah, I mean,
It's more about a culture of rock and roll
you can
compared
argue
to
that,
just
but
the
then,
music.
at the same time, Whitney Houston doesn't fit that description either, does she? Because there are a lot of similarities between hip hop and rock and roll, and often there's a lot of artists that sort of bridge that gap and merge the two together and do very well. But yeah, I've not heard very many Whitney Houston metal covers, for example. I'm sure they're out there, and if they're not, if they're not already out there, just credit me. Thanks.
I would put strong money on the band Our Last Night being one of them to do it. Terrible. Well, that's the news, though. So shall we move on to the next segment? All right, let's talk about some latest releases and reviews. I think the one that we should all talk about first is Bring Me the Horizon's latest release.
I very much enjoyed it.
I find that because they labelled it an EP,
Yeah,
I kind of lean away from that. I don't know what, I just have the idea in my mind. If you've kind of got at least 8 songs on there, that tends to me to be like more of an album.
It's a lot more like a mini album, isn't it?
It is. I absolutely loved it. I remember hearing some of the songs. Ludens, when it first came out, didn't catch me straight away, because that was the first single released for Death Stranding as well, I believe. And then I think as more got released, Parasite Eve started to get me a bit more. Obey kind of hooked me in. And I can vividly remember the day that the album released. I was biking to work and I played it from the beginning. And as soon as Dear Diary hit in, I literally stopped where I was biking down a hill. And I remember messaging you, Dan, and just sending you the song and be like,
yeah,
this is insane.
That first minute of Dear Diary, when that blast beat starts kicking in, I kind of just had to stop what I was doing and just take it all in.
It was fantastic. It was, for me, it was a return to the Bring Me Horizon that I prefer.
Well, yeah, for them to go from Armo in their last album, where it was sort of a little bit softer, a little bit more pop,
yeah,
sort of lean to the pop side kind of thing, and then just come straight back in with their next release with that, was quite impressive.
Oh, it was a statement to come back with that. And I think just like in terms of, because obviously it's there with EP that they're going for, it gives to me the impression that they're not looking for as much maybe filler songs perhaps sometimes. Like they've probably thought out a lot of these songs, and for me, every song stands out on its own, and from start to finish, there's like a great progression as you go through the album. It feels to me like it flows very well.
It does feel a bit like an album, doesn't it? Like I'm sure in an interview a little while ago, Ollie said they were going to be not doing any albums for a while. They were just going to do a load of EPs, just groups of songs. But these songs do fit quite well together.
Yeah, they're calling them all like the post-human EPs, I think.
Right, okay.
So we're going to get different subtitles, I believe, of different, and obviously just this one is survival horror. I mean, off the back of this, introducing it to more people as well, there's been like a group of us that are going to now go and see Bring Me hopefully next September, like we said earlier on. It kind of just completely catapulted them back into my rotation of music that I have. Not just because of like this album release, but then I just started listening to them more again after that. It just seems it got pushed so much to the forefront as soon as it's released. It stands out definitely as one of my favourite things that have been released this year.
and also, dare I say it, I think if someone asked me what Bring Me the Horizon release best defines them as a band, I think I would probably pick this over Sempiternal.
Okay.
You know, I think it blends the first few albums that were really heavy and I loved for all those reasons. And it blends them so well with the, you know, That's a Spirit and Ammo and all the things on those albums I loved.
I agree. It's really cool for them to get Nova Twins in, which is a smaller up-and-coming band, which I think are going to be big in a couple of years' time. And people like Amy Lee on that last song. Got Baby Metal on there, which is really good.
It's fantastic. I've used that Baby Metal, the fact that they're now on this album and they've collabed on that song. I've got a friend who likes Baby Metal, and now I've got him in to Bring Me the Horizon through Kingslayer, which I find absolutely hilarious. That he's now listening to Bring Me the Horizon, because originally he listened to Baby Metal, hadn't really listened to Bring Me. He kind of has a lot of weird different genres he listens to, outside of this. He's not really a metal fan, but because he's kind of likes Japanese culture and likes baby metal, I've now got him listening to Bring Me purely on that collaboration on that song.
But also, I think it's the same thing with the Youngblood feature. That's going to take his fan base that maybe are on the lighter end of the spectrum for rock music and heavy music, and it's going to push them towards, more extreme, more heavy metal, which is good for everyone. Do you know what I mean?
It's fantastic. And like I said, it's one of my favourites I've got on there. At one point I was considering this. It's in consideration for me with Album of the Year. It's definitely up there.
It's up there for sure.
I think lyrically it's some of their best work as well, in a while at least. Sometimes I feel like when I'm listening to some of their other albums, it's just a bit, a song happens for 3 or 4 minutes and nothing really stands out to me about what he's saying.
I feel like a lot of the lyrics on this album have got quite metaphorical.
Again, I feel like there are some themes you can kind of see running through it as well. And the way the album flows, you can kind of feel. I think that helps when I've said like it feels like it progresses nicely, and it works very well listening to it from start to finish for me. And I think like some of those concepts and the way that Ollie's written lyrics for it, I think just aids in that and just helps that progression as you go from song to song. Each of them on their own, to me, they just all stand out as some fantastic songs, beautifully written, fantastically performed. Yeah, I think it's very hard nowadays, and I can probably think of very few albums, at least off the top of my head anyway, that from start to finish I'd like to sit down and listen to, and this is definitely up there as one of them. Shout out Stone Sour, House of Golden Bones Part 1. So from Bring Me the Horizon, I'm going to lead this next one. I want to take this. I'm going straight for it. Dan, I would like to take this moment to publicly thank you for introducing me to Tallah.
You're very welcome. I can't take all the credit. I saw someone post a link on a Facebook group I'm in, and I was like, yeah, I'll have a look at that. And yeah, after listening to 2 of their songs, I was like, I think Alex and James will like this.
Mate, I'd heard of them a bit. I come from a drum background, and Mike Portnoy is very renowned. When he was the drummer of Dream Theater, drum with Avenged on Nightmare, and just technically is fantastic. And I was aware of Tallah from the fact that it's his son Max drumming for them. And I'd heard the name kind of floated around for a while, but never just delved into it. And I remember when you sent it to me and seeing like popped up like, oh, you've sent me a Tallah song. Okay, let me check it out. Of being like, okay, oh, that's Max Portnoy's band. It gave me a little bit more intrigue. And I can't remember what song it was you sent me.
I think
first.
It was No One Should Read This.
I think it would have been No One Should Read This. Yeah. Oh man, the new metal sound that they've got, like modernized for me, is fantastic. And like, I hear so much Slipknot in them and Korn, and with them being some of my favourite bands, like musically, this just hits a spot for me.
You can hear the new metal influence in there. They sound a lot like older bands, like Korn and Slipknot, like you just mentioned, but they also sound like their own band at the same time, like a new thing. I'd almost label them new hardcore or something like that.
And what's nice is like there's been so many bands in the past that have shied away from calling themselves new metal. I've seen so many, like even Slipknot have done that, and they've just said, "Oh, we're not new metal, we're not a genre or whatever." But the fact that like I've seen like interviews with them where they're just like they're open to like, yeah, we're new metal, we like that. Like that's quite funny to see, and
it's coming back.
And I fucking love new metal. I think it's so good. Cold Chamber, Mudvayne, give me all of it. And I think one thing that really does separate it from new metal of kind of the 90s and 2000s is the vocalist.
It's kind of like when they've written these songs, and when it's come to him laying down some vocals, they've gone, so what vocal technique are you going to use on this one then, Justin? And he's just gone, I'll go for all of them.
But that's it. Like, I've gone into an absolute rabbit hole after I started listening to them, like watching interviews, watching some like the interviews from specifically like when they're recording the album, and like the background of the band and everything. And that's it. Then I've delved into rabbit holes just watching Justin stuff on YouTube. I don't know how much you both have looked into the concept of the album as well.
It's about a story of this kid that basically snaps and kills his mum, isn't it, or something like that?
There's more to it.
There's obviously more to it, but yeah, I haven't looked too much into the story.
There's a bit more going on. I don't want to give any spoilers, but he does cut his nub off.
I mean, it's absolutely twisted, but it's like an engaging story. And for me, I've always been quite fascinated how lyricists will try and tell a story through concept albums. And I feel like there's only been a few. No, there's only been there are 2 concept albums to me before that have stood out, and that's Scenes from a Memory by Dream Theater.
Oh my god.
No, but it's a concept album that stands out, and don't lie, I've heard you singing Dream Theater songs from that album. And then for me, it's the other one that stands out a little bit more is, like I said before, House of Golden Bones by Stone Sour. And then as they've kind of released a YouTube series going through all the different ideas, concepts, the storyline behind the whole album, I've just engaged with it so much more, and I feel like I've got a different way that I listen to the songs now, which to me is, it takes it to another level at that point. You connect to the music just ever so slightly more. And I recommend anyone just to go out, watch the YouTube series they've put out on the Tallah channel of Justin explaining it all. There's a lot more to it than... I feel like people should go out and find it, because I don't want to spoil it. And the way he explains it, there's just so many weird twists and turns, and it is absolutely messed up as well.
But I also think it's one of those things that you can enjoy it without having to know the story, and without going down that rabbit hole. You can just listen to it.
Yeah, that's something else I was about to say. The album's like 50 minutes long or something, but every song brings something different in.
It's true, because you have No One Should Read This right at the start, and it just kind of pounds away. Kind of flows beautifully into Overconfidence, and you get to songs like The Silo and We Are the Sad, and you just get like a whole different vibe from there. I want to shout out one song in particular, which is Too Quick to Grieve, because there's a point where they just have a guitar riff ready for a breakdown, and it gives like a ride cymbal kind of call that you know is going to be the biggest wall of death you're ever going to be in.
It really feels like this band are just having loads of fun writing music and just doing whatever they like. Like they'll find a guitar tone or come up with a riff or a breakdown or something. It's like, yeah, we'll just stick that here, and then we'll make it last about 2 minutes, and then we'll just make it go slower.
But the way, just to point this out as well, the fact that this is their debut album. Like, you could be talking like bands down the line years, once they've kind of got an established sound as well, that have built some notoriety. But no, this is their debut album. They've come off 1 EP beforehand.
I think if these guys get picked up by the right kind of people, they've already got connections within music. They're on the Knotfest radar now as well. If they get picked up by the right people and get pushed out by the right promoters, they're going to be huge. So if anyone is listening, takes anything away from this podcast, go and listen to Tallah. So in a few years' time, when they're headlining big festivals and doing big venues and stuff, you can say that you were there at the start.
You can thank us.
Yeah. Well, from an album that James loved to an album that he probably doesn't have much to say about, is Big Vibe by Seaway. This, for me, has been just, for what has been a rough year, I think, for a lot of people, has been such an overwhelmingly joyful album for me. It's hard to listen to a song on this album and not just kind of smile or bop your head or just get into it.
The name's in the title, really. It just really is a big vibe. I don't know personally if I think it's their best album. It's probably not my favourite they've done, but they've just done nothing wrong, really. I think with Seaway, you always know what you're getting. I think they're like a cheese sandwich. You know what you're getting. It's just cheesy pop punk. There's something better out there. Maybe you'd rather have a ham and cheese sandwich, but a cheese sandwich, you're going to take it, and it's still going to be good. You're still going to enjoy it. You're still going to have a nice time.
I love that analogy. I love that.
No, but sometimes you don't need any more. And they're suitable for vegetarians. They got rid of their bootlicker vocalist as well, so that's fine. Ryan's the better vocalist anyway, so...
I think that, for me, is what's made this whole album a bit more cohesive as well. It's just his vocals all the way through. And that... I much prefer his vocals to bloody Bootlicker. So I can't wait. Hopefully they tour next year. If tour is allowed.
Hopefully James can see them again.
Yeah.
They supported Knucklepuck at London Underworld because I managed to drag you along because you heard the blast beat in Pretense and you were like, yeah, all right, I'll come.
That's genuinely what you sold me the ticket to Knucklepuck on, was that blast beat in Pretense. I saw them. I wasn't a fan. I haven't heard this. Maybe I will listen to it at some point. So maybe we follow up and I'm like, oh, okay, I listened to it. It's all right.
You really do have to let yourself be open to the cheese of it, though. I think that's very important from the off.
Just a cheese sandwich. So that's the thing. I love a good bit of my pop punk. I wasn't too keen on them when I saw them.
Thing is, you quite like the newest Neck Deep album, don't you? And that leans on the poppy side of pop.
Yeah,
punk,
so can kind of like touch on that briefly. It does. I think I have a very soft spot for Neck Deep. I've seen them so many times live, but I think we've seen like the gradual change in their sound over the years as well. Like I would still look back at like the Wishful Thinking days as some of my favourite ones. And even the past few albums, I enjoyed the first half of the Peace and the Panic, I'll say. Life's Not Out to Get You was a very good album, but you can see like the change in their sound.
So I think in conclusion, we've got some homework for James to do there, which is to listen to some Seaway, and then on the next podcast, James can tell us what he thought.
See, we can segue lovely there because you two can talk a lot about A Day to Remember, and they've always been a band that have been like on the fringe. There's obviously, I think everyone always has bands that are like, oh, one day I'm going to get around to listening to them. And I think both of you have played me bits from A Day to Remember over the years so many times. And they've always been a band to me that I've been like, eventually I'll get the time to sit down and properly delve into it. I feel like, for me, personally, I need to find the time particularly to properly concentrate and like absorb the music. And I've just not had the chance to do that because I've had so many other bands that have kind of been on more of the forefront. But A Day to Remember released some new music this year.
Yeah, well, let me give you a word of advice, James. If you're going to listen to A Day to Remember, not the new ones.
It's not just Alex, it's also
and maybe
me.
I'm just kind of outgrowing them as a band.
Right, this is really putting some confidence in me listening to A Day to Remember.
They were, if we were talking Homesick, What Separates Me From You era, pioneers of what they were doing.
I agree. It kind of feels like back in sort of the Homesick days, they were at the top of their game. They were probably one of the biggest bands in the scene. Definitely inspiring a lot of other bands to come through and make a similar kind of sound. Because they did a really good job of, I guess, easycore, you'd call it, wouldn't you? Where they straddled the sort of between pop punk and almost metalcore kind of thing.
So what about this new release? Is it a different vibe? Is it?
It feels like they're kind of just existing now. They're trying to adapt. Well, the way I interpret it sounds like they're trying to adapt to be more pop-like, but then they chuck a little breakdown in, and it just doesn't really work for me. It feels like they're going, oh, people that listen to music like this kind of music now, and they'll do that for half the song, and then they go, oh, but people like A Day to Remember because we do breakdowns, and then they'll just chuck sort of half a breakdown in at the end, and it just sort of doesn't. Yeah.
And it just feels like, in a way, not a parody, but like taking everything that they did really well and just doing it as simply as they possibly could. And it breaks my heart because they were so incredible, and I loved them as a kind of teenager.
Well, don't get me wrong, I still really like them now. I saw them at Reading Festival last year, and they were really, really good. Although they did play mostly just their old songs. But I think, like we said, they're becoming that kind of band now where they'll just they could tour off of those old songs and old albums easily and just not do anything again.
Because they've also been a band that have been, at some point basically, Download have got to start having a new breed of headliners. And A Day to Remember has been a name that's been floated around for quite a while, that they have a vast catalogue of music, and one day when it gets to that point when we need to break through some new bands, which some of the old guard would not be happy with, A Day to Remember will be one of those that will headline Download possibly.
They've missed the boat on it, to be honest.
I think they've missed the boat as well. I think I think if they were to ever headline a festival like Download, it'd have to be like a Homesick anniversary set or something. But I think they've just missed the 10th anniversary of that album. I think that was 2009.
Yeah, it was 2009, yeah.
Get in the comments and tell us how wrong we are.
Have a little argument with us about this.
So one band that we can all three talk about is Architects.
Never heard of them.
Small little bands.
Yeah, a bit small, aren't they? Bit of a small little band.
I mean, Wembley's tiny, isn't it?
Do you know what? I'll say it. They're the best UK metal band.
Yep. No objection.
I mean, Animals came out, and it's a slightly different sound. You can see Holy Hell was a fantastic album, and I think under all the circumstances they've been under, for me, even I came late to the Architects party quite a lot. But for me, it just that's one of the albums as well for me that I say is fantastic from start to finish. And coming off that, it really boosted how high I think of Architects, like in my order of bands. And I think I had a lot of high expectations coming through with new songs and new material being released. Especially with Tom being like a major songwriter, and he still had a lot of influence over Holy Hell. This was a lot more of their songwriting without him. And when I first heard Animals in particular, there were some really good points to their song, but it didn't grab me in particular. But I feel like, again, it's one of those songs that the more I've listened to it, it's grown on me.
Yeah, but when I first listened to Animals, I thought, oh, okay. But after maybe 3 listens, I was like, okay. Because it's a slightly different sound to what we're used to with Architects, but like, I can't explain what's different about it, but it was good. I really like it.
For me, in terms of being different, I'm used to a lot more of Architects' riffs having more movement.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
If that makes sense. This one seems to be like almost more basic in terms of riffs. And I don't know if... I think that's like the musical change for that is where it lies a lot with me. I think it did prove to me to the point that I think Sam Carter's vocals are still the best in metal, and I think will be for a long, long time.
He just keeps getting better as well. Like just when you think, oh yeah, Sam Carter's the best around, and then he just, on Black Lungs especially, it's even better. It's just not really fair on anyone else.
I tell you what though, in terms of like the versatility, Justin Bonnets is coming after that throne though.
He can get
He's
there.
coming
He's
after
still
that
young.
throne. Eventually. Give him some time. 1 year, one album under his belt. But I think I think the amount of times that we've seen Architects live, I've never seen Sam put out a bad performance. In particular, I think when we did All Points East last year, and he came out with Ollie for Bring Me the Horizon's headline set, it just showed the levels there are in the vocal game between them, and how good Sam is. But then, like kind of going back to that with the new Bring Me, Ollie's sound on that sounds very good, and seeing some of the behind the scenes, I think that like you sent me, Dan, from like the YouTube content they've been putting out. I'm a lot more hopeful of how like Ollie kind of maybe relearning a little bit some technique and putting some more time and effort into his screams. That hopefully, if we do see them next year, that he will kind of change my perspective on what to expect from a Bring Me the Horizon concert. And then again, going back to Animals, I think we're going to talk about some live streams later on, but Animals, once seeing it live on the Architects live stream, it completely changed it for me, and it just shows how good of a live band Architects are. And with this new album coming out, I'm hyped for a tour after that.
I was going to say, seeing them play it live on that gig was the clicking point for me for Animals. I was like, oh, I get it now. It's insane. And I think the same can be said of the other 2 new songs that they played live.
I really like Dead Butterflies.
Dead Butterflies for me as well was just ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to how, like, the direction of this album. I mean, I'm intrigued by it, about where Architects are going to go.
I'm really excited for the Simon Neil feature.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect from that. I'm really looking forward to this.
A part of me is kind of hoping that maybe they redo that Royal Albert Hall show next year with a crowd and with an orchestra, because they've got other songs in their catalogue that could use an orchestra.
I did see, going to that point, a lot of people when they led up to the announcement of the live stream, that people were asking, "Oh, would you do something with an orchestra?" And I think it was Sam Carter responded and said, "No, some friends of ours have already done that, and they knocked it out of the park, and we don't want to be compared to it." Something along those kind of lines. I'm paraphrasing slightly.
Bring me to horizon,
It was very much like, we know that we could do that, but yeah. But yeah, I think as much I'd love to see that as well. You look at some of the like string work they have on Holy Hell in particular, like Mortal After All, and it would be fantastic.
Can we big up Josh Middleton as well, because he's I understand he's written a lot of the guitar and most of the songs on the new album, and they sound really good. And Dan Searle as well, because the lyrics sound really good in the new songs.
It's big shoes to fill, isn't it?
And that's I remember seeing about Dan, like an interview or something about when he first started writing the lyrics, and I think fairly recently talking about how far he feels like he's come in his own lyric writing. And for me, I haven't noticed a change in that, so I don't know if him just trying to keep that old Architect sound, but to me it sounds fantastic. And this is one of my most anticipated albums for next year at the moment.
Yeah, and they're only on the up, aren't they?
They are. And again, like we talked a minute ago about, you said about Day to Remember, about them being past it. I pray that we don't get to a point where Architects are past the point where they could headline Download.
I was going to say, we were just talking about Download headliners.
One day, I think they would be fantastic as like that new breed to come through and headline. They've got such a good catalogue behind them. They've got the fan support. I don't really think I've found anyone that knows of Architects and doesn't like them. Everyone that I know that I've come across that knows of Architects has enjoyed some of their music at some point at least. I've never really heard negative opinions about them.
They've got a very strong back catalogue. Now as well. They've been around. Like it seems like they're quite a young band, but they've been around for a long time now. Since 2004, I believe.
Andy Copping, if you're listening, can you please book them as a headliner for Download in 2022? Thank you.
Andy Copping is always listening.
Why wouldn't he be listening?
Always.
So, I'm going to just take a bit of a solo quick thing here, just to shout out the new Ocean State Alaska song. I don't know if Alex... Dan, it's probably not your cup of tea because you haven't really listened to them as much.
Really listened to them much, no.
I don't know if you heard it, Alex. Because just to educate you a little bit here, Dan, they've released 2 albums so far, both with different vocalists, but this new song they've released and it's upcoming with a new album, they got the old vocalist James Harrison back. Something happened. Yeah, they had James Harrison... I'm struggling to recall the name of the first album, but then they got Jake Noakes in for the latest album, Hikari, that came out, which is where I kind of probably got introduced to them. And I think they had a lot of issues with him live. He didn't really perform to standard. And for me, it's fantastic. The first lyric with the old vocalist back is "Did you miss me?" on the song, which is it's just quite funny to hear. It is fantastic. You can kind of just see. I think it has him saying it, looking into the camera in the music video, and you just look at that as a fan, being like, "Oh, that's quite cool. Like he's back." For me, I will always as you may learn over the time of listening to this podcast, I am a drummer. I like to come at things from a drum aspect, and Chris Turner's drum sound and his performances are absolutely insane. I'm just going to shout out his ghost notes on the snare in this track because they're fantastic. And his double bass patterns, it's ridiculous. It's not a big standout song for me by them. They've done a lot better, but with the original vocalist back, I'm very intrigued of where they're going to go with the new album. And I'm keeping it on the forefront of what I'm kind of like looking out for soon.
Well, anyone that knows me knows that I love the Wonder Years. This year was meant to be the 10th anniversary of their album The Upsides. And next year will be the 10th anniversary of their album Suburbia. They were meant to be doing a tour to celebrate it. They were going to play Slam Dunk here in the UK. That's me assuming that we've actually got listeners from other countries. But yeah, they were going to do a Slam Dunk set, which was just songs from The Upsides, which I was really excited for. Obviously didn't happen. What they've done instead is record 2 new songs in the style of those old albums, which is really cool. don't know if you guys have listened to them.
I've not had a chance yet.
That's really cool. I haven't, but you saying that sounds like kind of everyone can think of a band that they love their early stuff and wish they would return to it. So it's rare for it to actually kind of happen.
It is really cool. Like they've changed. Their sounds changed a fair bit over their albums. Like if you listen to them back to back chronologically, you can kind of sense the differences and how they've moved on. So it's really nice. It seemed like they really enjoyed going back to the old sort of songwriting style as well.
So I feel like I've got a little bit of homework with listening to the Wonder Years as well. Because they've been a band that you've mentioned to me for years now. I can remember the first time we went to Slam Dunk, and you, as like the headliners at the end of the day, were bouncing between Architects, Wonder Years, and You Meet at 6, I think it was. And I remember even back then, that's going back to I think like 2015, 2016, you hyping them up. And again, it's just one of the bands I need to get around to listening to at some point and just sit down. Maybe this will give me the avenue to really focus on some new bands. And
I feel like for the last few years, I've just been like a fanboy about the Wonder Years to you two, and you've probably both gone, "Oh yeah, okay, all right."
The thing is, like you in particular, I count like a few different factors that have very much influenced what I listen to, and I can go back to when I first met you in sixth form, and I think it was like the first one's like, oh, I heard you listen to Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Somewhere I heard that along the grapevine, and then we just started talking about music. And I think going back to a lot of the music that you've sent me, I would say my top 3 bands that I listen to that are my favourites are Slipknot, Beartooth, and While She Sleeps. Both Beartooth and While She Sleeps are bands that you've recommended to me over the years. So I'm going to be honest, out of anyone I know, probably any music recommendations that come from you are ones that I do trust.
And if the listeners want more music recommendations, follow the Bird Box on Instagram.
Oh, there's the plug.
A word from our sponsors.
Dan, tell us your blog. Tell us about it.
I just do pretty much the same as what we're doing here. I just talk about music and stuff. And sometimes you can discover some new artists. Sometimes you can just think, oh, he likes that band too. That's about it, really.
I have enjoyed the recent series you've been doing with the Better Days.
Oh yeah, I did a little series where I just looked back about sort of old gigs in the old life, when gigs were a thing.
It's quite cool because then, like, you've made comments about like how you've seen bands progress.
Yeah.
As they kind of go through new albums, and the more they kind of become experienced, and you can just kind of see the growth of bands. I very much connected with that because for me, I like watching, say, like Sleeps or even like Beartooth, like I said before, watching them progress. It always gives you almost like a proud dad kind of feel about how they've got bigger.
Well, with While She Sleeps especially, where we've seen them like at the Bullingdon in Oxford, which is like a 300 capacity venue, and now we've seen them headline Brixton Academy and sell it out. That was, like you said, that's like a proud dad moment.
Oh, that's amazing. I think you've done a Better Days with While She Sleeps, haven't you?
I did a Better Days with While She Sleeps. I did one of the Wonder Years as well. And you can find them all at the Bird Box.
The Bird Box on Insta? What's the app?
It's the _ Bird Box. Good lads.
Well, we'll chuck it in the description as well.
And I think that's everything to review, really, isn't it?
Next segment.
Is next segment like your edit cue?
I don't know. We'll figure it out when we do it. It's either going to be me saying next segment, and then, or that is where we cut off.
And just for a laugh, you're going to leave this bit in as well.
Yeah.
Take us away, Alex.
Okay, so I want to do something just to kind of take us away from music a little bit. It's a little this or that segment. And given that it's December, Christmas, I was originally going to pit Christmas songs against each other, but boring. So instead, we've got 2 Christmas artists, and I've put them in a fight.
Okay.
And I want you two to tell me who you think is going to win.
No weapons? Okay.
Yeah. Street fight, that's the parameters. No weapons. And crucially, they are fighting from the version of them that released the song. So when I say George Michael, I mean him
Gotcha.
releasing Last Christmas.
Okay. Yep.
Okay? We clear? Alright, first up, Elton John versus Shakin' Stevens.
I don't even know where to start with this. Elton John versus Shakin' Stevens. I don't have a lot of explanation. I'm just going to lean towards Shakin' Stevens.
The double denim is a strong look, and it takes a brave man to pull that off. But Elton John has a lot of strong looks as well, so I'm going for Elton John.
Okay, Alex? Oh, come on.
Yeah, I reckon Elton John as well. Yeah, definitely. Alright. Mariah Carey versus Ariana Grande.
Mariah.
Mariah, hands down.
It's Mariah every day of the week.
Easy.
Okay. The original Band-Aid versus the Band-Aid 20, which was the one in the 2000s.
I'd say the original. They'd have probably got, like, without looking at the lineups,
Yeah?
they probably got a little bit softer over the years in terms of how boy bands are and who they would have got in for it. I feel like the ones in... Was it 86, was it? I feel like that. Them, 84. I think they'll have a bit more of a fight to them.
I mean, I could chuck you a few names out if you want from the original Band-Aid.
I mean, I reckon younger Bono would beat older Bono.
That was, I was going to say as a little sub-question, which version of Bono wins? I think older Bono.
You think older Bono?
I'm going for the original Live Aid. Band-Aid, whichever.
I feel like they'd have a bit more scrap to them.
Although it would be a fight I'd like to see. That would be quite a brawl. It'd be like Anchorman.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah. I think Duran Duran kick the shit out of Coldplay.
Yes. Yes.
Alright, the next fight is George Michael versus Cliff Richard.
I've got George for this one.
I would.
I'm in Cliff Richard.
I think Cliff Richard is too nice.
I think the way those arms swing in Mistletoe and Wine, but I think the way those arms swing in Mistletoe and Wine, like, I feel like if we're talking like
Cliff
fight in
Richard
general,
swaying,
and I'm going to bring like the MMA aspect into this. Cliff Richard swaying, mate. He's got loose shoulders. I think he's got some sneaky jiu-jitsu in his back pocket.
loose shoulders.
Yeah,
Shoulders.
He's got loose shoulders.
The way those arms sway. Yeah, I mean at that point, I reckon he's got some sneaky jiu-jitsu in his back pocket at that point. Alex?
George Michael. Eyes of a killer. Alright, the next one is a bit of a tag team match. I've got John and Yoko going up against Tom Jones and Keris Matthews, who did Baby It's Cold Outside.
You don't mess with Tom Jones.
I think that's the route I'm going down. You can't do that. Tom's going to do the D-Day. He's going to take him out.
Tom lays out John Lennon, but I think Yoko sorts out Keris Matthews.
John and Yoko are all about peace, though, aren't they?
They wouldn't want the fight. Tom Jones is going to walk him down at that point.
Yeah, Tom Jones wants the fight.
You can tell that.
And lastly, I've got E17 versus the three of us.
As in you, me, and Dan.
Yeah.
How many are in E17?
I think
Is
there's
it just
4,
3
yeah.
or is it more?
I mean, I'd like to think we could take
we got
them,
'em.
but I would be dazzled by their jackets and their headwear.
I'm a huge E17 fan. And that is not me being ironic.
We haven't even properly
Oh,
introduced
God.
the fact that me and Alex are brothers, by the way. And
We're brothers.
there was
yeah,
a
we
point
live
recently
together.
where you were just... I think we were just chilling and you were just watching E17 music videos on YouTube. And you were just kind of just going through the rabbit hole of watching loads of that. So he genuinely is being very serious when he's now a fan of E17.
Alex is a very serious person.
Yeah. And I think they beat us in the fight.
Well, I put it out there that I wouldn't want to fight them. They seem like nice guys. They've got some good
I think
songs.
we put up a good fight.
But we could take them.
Yeah.
He's 17. If you're listening,
Yeah.
get in touch.
Well, that concludes this or that section. It might make a return on the next episode.
Or maybe that or this.
We'll see.
Oh, mix it up a little bit.
Tune in next time to find out.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Unique. Alright, this next segment is one that I'm personally really excited about. We're going to feature a song. give a shout out to artists that we love, that are small, independent, that we think other people should listen to. And this episode is a band that I really enjoy listening to. The band is called New Depth, and the song's called Open Up.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and like, with pun fully intended, there's like a nice fun riff to open up the song. I find that the balance and the mix of it, particularly because they are a 3-piece, I really did like the balance in the mix.
Yep.
You could, like, a lot of times when you have a 3-piece, it's like finding all the different points and making sure you can still hear everything cleanly. I very much like that. Some nice little small builds at the end of the verse into the chorus. I've really enjoyed the song. I'm looking forward to what else is going to come from them, because I think they've been teasing some more music as well coming out soon.
Shall we listen to the song?
All right, here are our 2020 awards. It's been a rough year, but musically, I've had a great year as a fan. So we're just going to run through, I guess, some of our favourite stuff. We're going to start with Gig of the Year. James?
For me personally, despite I had a wonderful time seeing Slipknot at the O2 Arena because it's Slipknot, and Beartooth at the Roundhouse was fantastic, but Gig of the Year for me, just for it being, in a way, historic, of just seeing the rise of them, was While She Sleeps at the Brixton Academy. From seeing a band in a 300 capacity venue at the Bullingdon, like we've mentioned before, to seeing them headline Brixton Academy and selling it out was such a fantastic moment. The back catalogue that they're developing is fantastic. Like, the set list for it, you look at the songs and every single one is fantastic, yet you're still missing out so many songs. I love the fact that, personally, I think the first song that was ever introduced to me for Sleeps by Dan was Death Toll, and that had been missing off a few of the gigs recently, and they brought that back for this, and that made me so happy to see. There's always going to be songs I wish I'd seen from this, especially at Brixton. I'd love to have seen more from the older stuff. I was really hoping Crows was going to come into it, to be honest, because I think we were looking towards the anniversary of The North Stands for Nothing, I believe, when we were kind of going up to this gig. This, the 6th, didn't even get played, which just shows like the calibre that While She Sleeps are. So for me, like, Gig of the Year, one of my favourite bands, absolutely knocked it out of the park. And I don't know if it's the same for you guys at all.
Well, I have a different one as well. I agree that While She Sleeps was an incredible gig, and like, especially like you mentioned, to see them, like, sort of the rise of them, see them at so many different venues of so many of different sizes, see them headline that outright was really quite special. And they are my favourite band of the three that we saw at the start of this year before everything kicked off. But as in terms of a gig on its own, I actually really enjoyed the Beartooth one at the Roundhouse. I think their headline set itself, it felt, I know I just used that word, but it felt really quite special, and it actually felt like it really meant something to Caleb and the rest of the band. Like, he gave a little speech towards the end about his own mental health and how everything, that music just keeps him going, and how it kind of just created a big feeling of togetherness in the whole room, if that makes sense.
It was just before the disease, wasn't it? I mean, like, for me, like, I think everyone finds a way to connect to music, and, like, for me, emotionally, that album by Disease, I just connect with fantastically, and I think a lot of people do. And when he made that speech in particular there, I don't really think there was a dry eye in Roundhouse at all. I think everyone at that moment was, like, it was like everyone would kind of had become one. Everyone felt empathy with each other, and like that, it is definitely up there as one of the gigs for me. And yeah, I can see why you'd put that as number one as well. To be fair, that it was fantastic.
I think it adds to it that there was quite a big group of us that were there in the end, and we were all together for a lot of the show as well. And partner that with Amity Affliction supporting, who put on a really good set. I just think it was really good. Great adjectives, really good. Put that on the next Beartooth tour poster. Really good.
Alex?
Very good.
Yeah.
And also, shout out to Amity Affliction for a great set as well that night. I love that band. I have since I was a young teenage boy.
What would you say your gig was, Alec?
It was Counterparts at the Loft in Southampton.
I have been to the venue. It's literally like it's someone's bedroom.
Yeah, it's so small, and for the kind of band that Counterparts are, it was just perfect. The set they played was just from start to finish insane. The energy in the room was great. The pit was good. You know, I did have a bit of a faux pas where the guitarist tried to stage dive right at me and landed on me.
I feel like if you don't come away from a gig with that kind of story, then you can't really rate it as a top tier gig, can you?
I've always judged a lot of gigs being how I feel the next day.
What was in the worst?
How
the
good
worse
they were,
you feel, the
how
better
sore
the
I
gig
am,
was.
Yeah, how sore you are.
Yeah, I think so. Like how much? Yeah, exactly. How much I can't speak, how much I ache, bruises I may find. To me, marks up a fantastic gig.
Yeah. And I mean, they ended with The Disconnect, which is a song that means a lot to me and I absolutely love. So, yeah, it was an incredible gig. Can't Swim was support as well, and they were fantastic. I absolutely loved it. So that was my gig of the year. Cool. Next one is Song of the Year. So, James, you want to go first again?
So a few little extra mentions here. Veil of Maya released Outsider right at the beginning of the year. Some wonderful dissonant chords. Trivium's What the Dead Men Say, which is the title track of the album, and Overconfidence by Tallah has probably been on repeat constantly for me as soon as released. But for me, Song of the Year is Sleep Society by While She Sleeps. I think no one really had a clue this was going to get dropped when it was. I remember seeing like they started posting, emails were coming out to those who were subscribed to like newsletters from them. They're posting on social media being like, oh, we just have a very important announcement to do. And I think the three of us amongst each other were all kind of wondering, oh, what it was, because after Loz having vocal surgeries before...
There was concern for a while that they were breaking up, wasn't there?
Exactly, and I think like there was so much to do with that announcement they were putting out. And then I think as soon as you kind of saw... I mean, I'll get into this a bit more later on. But as soon as you knew what they were standing for, and as soon as you saw the press conference leading into the song, especially in the video, and as soon as you hear Welcome to the Sleep Society, for me, it's a song I can't get out of my head. The lyrics are fantastic, beautiful songwriting, and this is really why I said earlier about the Sleeps album next year is probably my most anticipated, and that's just on the basis of this one song. They are a band to me that I don't find any of their songs boring. I never skip any of their songs. I will listen to whole albums of While She Sleeps because I think all the content they put out is fantastic, and that's not going to stop with this song. So Sleep Society for me for Song of the Year is number one.
Something I really like about that song as well is that little like extra chorus at the end.
Yeah, the way they mix it up, and it's the little nuances of While She Sleeps that really get me. Some of the small lead parts that Sean will write, that the amount of times on social media he say he can't play live, but then absolutely nails. Yeah, that band is top tier, and yeah, Sleep Society is my Song of the Year.
Great. Dan?
Well, I've really struggled to think of just an individual song that was great, because I've listened to lots of full albums this year and often struggled to actually pick one song out of it. But I'm going to go straight into it. Parasite Eve by Bring Me the Horizon is my favourite song of the year, mainly just because of how big the chorus is. There's a nice, it's almost like a Linkin Park sound to it, which I quite like. It's also really cool as well. James mentioned earlier how they were teasing their studio recording and writing process on YouTube during the lockdown. And you were hearing snippets of this song just constantly. So it was really cool when it finally came out to actually hear all those bits sort of glued together and how it actually formed a proper song. So yeah.
It's got a fantastic build up to that first chorus.
Yeah, it's there's a bit of a payoff, isn't there? You've kind of got to wait. It's quite a long intro.
It is. It's really just like, it's that anticipation coming through.
As soon as that chorus hits, you're like in.
Yeah, great choice, Dan.
Thank you. What's your choice, Alex?
Oh, I've been back and forth on this one. But it's gonna be Kyoto by Phoebe Bridgers, which is a bit of a swerve for kind of the rest of what this podcast has been about. Because it is basically a pop song, I guess, but it's just infectious for me. I really love it. I've been a fan of Phoebe Bridgers for a long time as well. I really enjoyed her first album, and again with the whole like being proud of bands growing, she's had a really phenomenal year in terms of like her mainstream success. She's got Grammy nominations for this song and her album, and it just, since I heard it, it just hooked me in. I listen to it all the time.
I agree with you. I only got into Phoebe Bridgers this year on the release of that album, but I agree with you. It's a really good album as a whole, and that song was one of the standouts as well, I'd say.
Yeah. I did toy with. I want to shout out Mrs. David by Seaway, What the Dead Men Say by Trivium, which James mentioned, Pretty Boy by Joji, uh, and Swallowing the Rabbit Hole by Code Orange, which was my like second choice because that is such a
That song just keeps going, doesn't it? It's literally like going down the rabbit hole. It just gets deeper.
yeah, definitely. It's a perfect song. So that's my song of the year. Next up, we got album of the year. James?
At one point, right towards I think first lockdown, it was What the Dead Men Say by Trivium. Fantastic album from start to finish. Probably peak Trivium at this point. Bring Me released a fantastic album with Post-Human Survival Horror. August Burns' Red Guardians was fantastic. Suicide Silence, I think, flew under the radar with Become the Hunter. But for me, it was a late release, October time. But Metriphagy by Tallah, it's just my go-to. Every time I'm kind of out and about going anywhere and I put music on, I just seem to gravitate towards that album. Like in particular, like I said, Overconfidence up there in Song of the Year for me, and so many on that album could kind of be in that contention as well. It's an album that I could listen to from start to finish so many times. Like I've said before earlier on, the concept I find fascinating. I listen to the lyrics. Max Portner's drum parts are fantastic. He has some lovely like mini solos in these songs, and just the elements of the whole album. To me, Metriphagy, it's just a peak of music for me this year.
Yeah, I can say from living with you, I hear how much you're listening to it.
I can't describe the amount of times I've watched the live album release they did with Hate 56 is ridiculous. Because they play the album from start to finish on that, and without having like live gigs this year, the closest we can get a lot is watching live streams of bands. And for me, like it just seeing these songs live, even though I've never seen them live now, it just gets me even more excited and makes me fall in love with that album even more.
Yeah, great album. Dan?
Well, I've listened to a lot of albums this year. Obviously, there's been not much else to do. No live music, lockdowns and that. So I kind of knew that when this album came out, and it came out quite early in the year, that it was going to be my favourite. And it's Enter Shikari with Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible. There might be some kind of bias to it with me being quite a long-term fan of theirs.
Yeah.
But this album, I'd say it's a definitive album for them. It's kind of touched on a little bit of everything that they've done in all their previous albums. It's quite synth heavy in places. There's a few moments where it gets quite dark. There's moments where it gets political. But the standout moment for me is there's a sort of instrumental track called Reprise 3, which follows on from Reprise 1 and 2 from their first album. And it's basically the same little mantra that's being shouted out, and then just fades perfectly into the next song, Tina. It's probably the coolest thing I've heard all year. I was literally gasping when I first heard it.
It's really cool that they'd call back to early releases.
It's really
as well.
cool. There's a couple of lyrics that nod back to old ones as well. Yeah, I just really, really liked it a lot.
Alex, what's the album of the year for you?
It is Underneath by Code Orange. This album, I mean, like I said with the song Swallowing the Rabbit Hole, it's just, the whole album's ferocious. It's so heavy. It feels like a band defining themselves to me. And I mean, Dan put it best in his review that I read, where he called it almost like horror music. It's just so, at times it's quite almost unsettling to listen to. There are like these screaming samples at the end of one of the songs. It's kind of makes me a bit uncomfortable, but in like a really good way. It's just incredible. The title track to end it as well is some of their best work. Yeah, I think it's just the album of the year for me. Artist of the Year, the most important award there is. James.
This was a hard one because of how this year's been. It's hard without having gigs to talk about artists of the year for me. And so kind of basing it mostly off releases and trying to do like outside of it. I've got Trivium is up there as a band for me. Fantastic album, like I said. One of the first major bands to live stream. You still haven't seen a lot. Probably Architects are probably the next major band. I know you guys would say Code Orange, but I feel like in terms of look at mainstream, like Trivium is probably like a step above. Architects are a step above. And I feel like Trivium really pushed the way forward for that. Bring Me released a beautiful album. The stadium tour next year, getting everyone hyped up. But as a slight curveball for a link to my song of the year and what they're trying to do for the music industry and how they're trying to change everything, my artist of the year is While She Sleeps. I think what they're trying to do with Sleep Society is fantastic. Personally, I can say, although they're trying to change this for the industry, there is not another band that I feel I would 100% commit to paying a subscription service for in order to support them and their content in a way, which sounds a bit odd, but I think unless you're someone who really follows While She Sleeps, that's not something you'll understand. I think the way they come across on social media, the way they interact with fans is different from a lot of other bands that I see. And seeing like the polls that go up on Sleep Society, seeing the content they're putting out, even stuff like the Come Dine With Me mockery that they're putting out, the hot sauce they released that I've ordered but I've yet to try. They're trying to change the music industry. They're trying to do something new. They're trying to be innovative. They're giving back to their fans on a different way. And plus, for me, they're a gig of the year. They've got my song of the year. And for me, While She Sleeps are my artist of the year.
I kind of feel like that While She Sleeps have always had a really strong community amongst their fans, and they've always sort of given as much to their fans as their fans give to them, if that makes sense.
Like, I don't know if either of you have watched the podcast they've done. They're getting fans on their podcast to talk to them and ask them random questions. And I think like the way they interact with people, just the way they try and give back to their fans, and obviously everyone's paying a subscription service and they're making it, for me, so worthwhile. And it's like I'm even getting tempted to build up on like the different tiers that I'm on just to kind of support them. I paid up front for the year so they could just kind of take it and be like, literally, there's my money, go make these fantastic songs and I will see you when I see you live, hopefully in May.
While She Sleeps seemingly one of the few people that can make tiers work.
Hey,
fucking hell.
I like that. So then, from that, Dan, artist of the year for you, mate.
So I've just thought this one over really in the past hour or so, because I hadn't decided on the artist of the year. Because like James touched on, I would have usually judged it on who I've seen live or who's been playing loads of live shows and put on a great show. So my artist of the year would be While She Sleeps, and in fact it is While She Sleeps for the reasons that James has just mentioned. But because James has already mentioned them, I'm gonna say Fever 333. Because they reacted really well. They're quite a politically driven band, and they've got people of mixed race and different ethnicities within their lineup. So they reacted really strongly to the whole Black Lives Matter movement, doing a live stream dedicated to it, literally like days afterwards, which really helped raise awareness for it. They've released a mini album this year, which lyrically is really centered around that subject as well. And they've done more live streams since then as well. So I think just for their commitment to creating some kind of content during this year, I'd nominate them for it as well. Really good live band.
Yeah, what a great choice, Dan. My artist of the year is Code Orange. I mean, they've got my album of the year. They very narrowly have my song of the year. And I think, I mean, yeah, James touched on like Trivium live streaming, but I think as far as taking this pandemic and making the best out of the situation, for me, Code Orange has been the band that have absolutely blown everyone else out of the water. I mean, they live streamed their album release show, I think the day that the US went into a lockdown. They've then subsequently done another one called Under the Skin that was like a stripped back acoustic set. And then another one that was a paid for one that was the production was insane. They're just the band that have made this year theirs, I think. And I think that's reflected in like Grammy nomination. If you look at a lot of magazines and blogs and whatever, they're featured in, discussions for album of the year, artist of the year. I think they've just, yeah, they've emerged for me as like a front runner of kind of a new generation of heavy music. And I think they're great. And I think their drummer moving to the vocalist spot will elevate their live shows so much.
I was about to say that. It feels like they're one of those bands that have been there or thereabouts for a little while. I saw them at Download a couple of years ago, and sort of there was something missing from their live show. They kind of didn't have a proper frontman, because obviously their vocalist was the drummer at the time. And it kind of just felt like it was just people playing instruments. But now with the success of this new album and how great it is, and like you said, moving the vocalist to be an actual proper frontman now, I can't wait to get out and actually see them live again, because I think this will help project them onto bigger things now.
The thing is, you say about this being a strong year for them, Alex, this seems to be a year where I've seen their name mentioned a lot more. They seem to have been pushed to the forefront, and they've, in a year where it's just been messed up, especially with that music industry of what is the normal, they've really have made the most of it and got their name out there quite well.
Yeah, they've really, for me, taken over this year. And yeah, I mean, if you're not really a fan, you're not really keeping up with them, and you're seeing their name everywhere, I mean, they're doing something
Exactly.
right. Yeah.
But I think that you look at that across the board for each one of the bands that we've said they're an artist of the year, a lot of it there also comes down to fan service. You look Code Orange putting out multiple live concerts to like appease the fans. You look at Sleeps, what they're doing with Sleep Society. Look at Fever, how they're making a stand and like pushing forward and being progressive with what they're doing. A lot of this year does come down to fan service at that point. And again, I think that's a lot of people have conceptions of what heavy music is like. And I think unless you actually listen to it and properly take it into like consideration and know these bands, you don't know how good the community can be and how much they like progressive they will be, and they will stand up for the right kind of things, and they will do the best by everyone at that point. I think all three bands there between us, I think, speak for that.
I feel like everything's reciprocated as well. So I think bands know that their fans are struggling because they can't go to live shows or anything. There's that sort of escapism missing. So the bands want to do something for the fans, but also the fans understand that bands don't have their livelihoods at the moment. They don't really have any live shows. They can't promote their albums properly. So there's kind of a want for both sides of the coin there to want to give.
I think it is. And I think where people want the content out there at the minute, almost in a wage to keep you occupied, and these bands are releasing the content out there of different varying kinds, whether it be live streams, whether it be music, any kind of videos or anything, just to keep your fans engaged at that point. It's going to be very well received, especially this year, but when it's at that high kind of quality that all these artists are putting out, it just makes it even better at that point. It makes you realise why you love these bands and why you love this kind of music, I think.
Oh. Yeah, I suppose we'll wrap it up with some album recommendations. James, before the next episode, what can our listeners go and listen to in their free time?
I've spoken about it so much, but I'm just going to reinforce Tallah with Trilogy. I feel like I need to, in a way that is their debut album. They need the biggest push they can, whereas you've got albums that released this year by people like Trivium, people like Bring Me, who headline big tours. They've got big fan support. They've got a big following. Tallah, this is their first album. For me, like I said, it's album of the year. They've got song of the years at their potential. The concept behind it, the musicianship, it's fantastic. I can't say enough good things about this album. I think everyone needs to go away, listen to it. Obviously, it's not going to be for everyone, because metal music is not for everyone. But you've got so many different genres kind of combined into this new metal. You've got Justin's rap parts in songs like Red Light that just bring me old Corey vibes from songs like Only One on the Slipknot debut album. The fact they now kind of really properly completed their lineup as well with a second guitarist and with a DJ. It seems like they're coming into their own, and I think a bold prediction, I think 2021 is going to be a big year for them if they can tour. I'm hoping that either, I think mostly Download, they've got a few spaces left, I think, to fill, and if we can get just some little bit of Tallah in there, for me, with already having a ticket to Download, I would be very excited. So for me, yeah, album recommendation, check out Metriphagy by Tallah, and crank it at full volume, please.
Nice. Dan, an album for the people.
An album for the people. I'd like to recommend Brave Faces Everyone by a band called Spanish Love Songs. I only discovered them earlier this year after hearing Dan from the Wonder Years talking about them quite a lot. And they're just a really, really good emo pop punk band. If you really like music that's about being ridiculously hopeless and miserable, then it's a great album for you. And it kind of sums up the year, really.
A nice retrospective at that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they do really well to convey like just the emotion and feeling of being completely lost and hopeless, but also trying to sort of hang on in there at the same time.
Are they new?
They've been around a little while. I think this might be their second full length, but they've got a few EPs out as well.
Who would you compare them to?
They're sort of a crossover, I'd say, between the Wonder Years and the Menzingers. I don't know if you two have heard of the Menzingers.
I have not.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're sort of like a bit of a Midwest emo / pop punk kind of band.
I shall check them out.
I'll recommend Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. I think if you're a metalhead listening to this, try something new. It's an incredible album. Lots of different emotions, different moods.
Different moods for different people.
And it ends with the best... Yeah, exactly. And it has the best album ending song of the year, I think. So go listen to it. Why not? Give it a try.
I'm now picturing a metalhead with like long hair and like a Sabbath t-shirt on, just dimming the lights, putting some candles on, and just vibing to Phoebe Bridgers. Yeah. And maybe having a little cry.
That's how I've spent my lockdown.
These are all albums that you can have a little cry to.
Yeah, in different ways. Very different ways.
Yeah.
Different albums for different needs.
Well, there we go. Great podcasting, guys.
Let us know how we got on in the comments. Or tell us how terrible we were.
Or also, if you want to be positive, give us some album recommendations. What's been your song, album, gig or artist of the year? What have you enjoyed out of music?
Yeah, maybe start an argument in the comment section. That'd be fun.
And don't forget to hit dislike if you didn't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. But maybe don't say that, Dan.
Okay. Edit that out then.
We'll edit that out.
Bye.